Welcome back to the Drunken Odyssey. I am John King, and I'm joined by my dear friend, Shawn McKee.
Hello, John.
And today we're going to talk about one of your favorite movies, Lifeforce.
Sure.
Directed by Tobe Hooper, and this was 1986?
85.
85. Okay. This is kind of a legendary movie among people who love unusual movies.
Sure.
So let me begin with a question. How the fuck do you love this movie?
Well, I think with a lot of, especially 80s films, it comes back to this kind of images I saw of it as a kid on television. Of course, heavily edited because what's in the movie, half of it probably never made it on television, but it was a mainstay. As a kid, I always saw the sort of the more apocalyptic scenes toward the end where the whole London is turned into zombies. And I would, so as a kid, I was like, what the hell is this? And those images just lasted in my head. And I was also a big fan of Invaders from Mars, another Tobe Hooper directed remake. So I already knew who he was because I liked that movie as a kid, and seeing it as an adult, I can see why. It's definitely more enjoyable as a kid, but that just sort of stayed with me, right? Those images. And then as I got older, of course, and I'm a big movie buff, film lover, so, and a big fan of Tobe Hooper. So this always kind of stayed as, I think, one of his more interesting films. Despite many flaws, it goes back to those nostalgic images that always stayed with me.
But for it to actually work as nostalgia, there has to be something pretty powerful about it, even if we can point out some pretty big flaws. So for you, what is it that makes it so nostalgic other than you were a kid when you saw it for the first time?
Well, I think time and place, right? There's a lot going on here, especially with Canon Films and what their output at the time. So it's kind of this weird moment in cinema history where you had someone like Tobe Hooper, straight off the success of Poltergeist, being given this 3-picture deal, just carte blanche of just, here, make 3 movies, here's your deal for Canon Films, but one of them had to be Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So I thought it was interesting finding out, of course, years later, that this was the first of those 3 movies, which is, I mean, it's just a batshit crazy movie. It is bonkers. And this was his first endeavor, right, as part of that 3-picture deal. So I think if you look at his career, the largest impact were those 3 films with Canon, outside, of course, Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the 70s. But I think it speaks to a time and a place and sort of an attitude of how things were in 1985. With the British backdrop, I think kind of works against the film, at least for American audiences. But it's an interesting take, right? Like, I think it's
though it does have Matilda May being naked for half the movie. Yeah. We should probably describe the plot before we go further for anyone who hasn't seen this.
Yeah, so
bonkers movie.
I have notes, so I don't. There's so much going on in this movie, right? So,
is it a science fiction movie?
Yes.
Is it a horror movie?
Yes.
Is it an erotic thriller?
Sure.
Detective story?
Yep.
Alien invasion movie?
All of that. Apocalyptic, end of the world.
Zombie movie?
Yes. Yep. They throw everything in
under 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the fact that this movie was made makes it significant in the sense that it really is all over the place. And again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's grounded in this sort of mystery about these life force sucking vampires. I guess that's where the plot kind of centers around. So it does have a, conventional setup. You have this expedition, this spaceship, the Churchill. They are studying Halley's Comet after, every 70 years, whatever. So it's really significant for them to study the comet. And at the time, Halley's Comet was passing through as well. So a little bit of timeliness there. And
theoretically, Tobe Hooper was hoping to hit some of that Halley Comet mania, which I don't really remember actually happening.
No,
but
I don't recall.
It's not the worst. It's not the worst theory that trying to make it timely, because it was adapted from a Colin Wilson novel called The Space Vampires.
Yes.
And the movie's called Lifeforce. Should it have been called The Space Vampires?
Tobe Hooper said that it should have, but I like Lifeforce. It makes sense to me. I mean, they are vampires, yes, and they are from space, but they are energy, at least in the novel, they're energy vampires. And that much is clear, I think, in the film. too. So, I mean, this whole thing centers around Life Force because at the end, you see the special effects, right? The Life Force protruding up into the sky, being sucked into this derelict spacecraft.
Gets
right?
a little woo-woo by the end.
So,
yeah.
So it makes sense to me, the title.
I think Space Vampires sounds more fun, though I'm not sure this is a fun movie. Depends on what your idea of fun is. There's this international space mission to explore Halley's Comet. They find in the sort of nose of the comet this spacecraft, this organic looking spacecraft. And it turns out there are these desiccated bat humanoid figures. And then there are 3 perfect specimens of humanoids in these sort of crystal cases somewhere in there. And so, like all good scientists, they thought, we better bring these back with us.
Sure. What could go wrong? So, yeah, they are appear to be hibernating. I don't know how they've survived where there's, dead bat carcasses everywhere. And the bats are great special effects. The design on them are really cool. We're going to get to know Colonel Carlson. He's the main character, at least in part of the movie.
Our hapless astronaut. Yeah.
So he leads his crew and they go into the giant, long phallic looking spacecraft that Tobe Hooper said he meant to emulate Dracula's castle in it, right? So I never really thought that, but it does make sense, with and he wanted to make what he referred to as a 70 millimeter Hammer film. So I think that it excuses a lot of the film's excesses when you approach it that way, that it is almost a big budget B movie that he's trying to make. And it does work on that level.
His next movie was Invaders from Mars.
Yeah. So this was part of the science fiction path of his canon there. Oh, and I also want to mention that the setup is very similar to Alien as well. And that came from Dan O'Bannon, who wrote the script with Don Jacoby. And they also worked together on Invaders from Mars. Very alien-like setup. Like, we found this thing. Do we go? Do we explore? And of course they have to. They find these hibernating vampires, bring them on the ship to take back to Earth. And I guess that's when all hell breaks loose. But a lot of it happens off screen.
One of the reasons why maybe this seemed like such an insane movie, you could follow it, but not carelessly.
Yes, very good point.
Alien or Aliens, like you could sort of be half awake and follow it. I mean, the scariness of those movies is likely to keep you awake. But in the case of Life Force, yeah, we've got Tom Carlson, and it just seems like a very classic old school science fiction movie for, let's see here, the first 18 minutes. And then we switch to the British government observing what's happening with the space shuttle that they were using, not hearing any word from the crew and being really concerned with what's going on there. They end up investigating the aftermath of the mission. All they've been able to find from the ship are these 3 humanoids encased in their crystal or crystalline. They describe it as a force field, right? They don't know what it is. It's not technology they're familiar with or materials they're familiar with. So we've got a new character, Leonard Bukovsky, played by Michael Gothard.
Yep.
He just seems like a sensitive scientist who you could see how he's very pragmatic, but he's also observant and thoughtful. And he ends up becoming a partial victim to our space woman, vampire queen.
Space girl, that's her official name.
Use my body.
So at that point, we think, okay, I guess he's the main character, but we're only introduced to him at minute 18.
Sure.
But we think, okay, I guess the story's about him now. And there's a pretty big ensemble anyway. At like the 1 hour mark,
yeah,
I think that's the last time we see him.
You will get lost if you don't pay attention.
Like an hour, 40 minutes into the movie, like it's referenced, oh, he died off screen. And you're like, I guess the good news is Tom Carlson returns and becomes our main character again. And then it's kind of a buddy picture with him and Colonel Colin Kane.
Yeah.
I'm Colonel Kane.
Played by Peter Firth. Tom Carlson's played by Steve Railsback, who just gives off these made-for-TV vibes. Like he's not bad exactly, frankly, his job as an actor is nearly impossible to pull off.
Sure. Yeah. And also to point out, since we're still kind of or covering Act One territory, there's a big difference between the American theatrical release and what is now referred to as a director's cut, which is on this Shout Factory Blu-ray. So you have what's called the international cut, also director's cut. So there's a lot more going on with the ship at the beginning in the international cut. And that's the cut I'm more familiar with. So the other night I was watching the theatrical. Who wants to watch the theatrical cut, right? If you have the more. So I sat down and watched some of it. And man, do the theatrical version glosses over the expedition. Like they're in such a rush to get this movie going. One difference is the opening credits for the international version is flying through space, right? The bombastic music, dun, 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 dun. And then
music by?
I'm sorry?
Music by?
Oh,
Henry Mancini.
Yeah, who did Pink Panther, a lot of Blake Edwards movies.
Peter Gunn theme.
Yep. Great composer.
Maybe not his best work here.
Yeah.
It's not terrible.
No. It sets the tone that this is a science fiction action film. That's the tone it's sort of going with, less of a horror
kind of
film.
Stately military march.
Yeah. Bum, 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 bum. It's just funny how, and I guess it's really your preference. If you want to see more scenes on the Churchill, watch the international version. And they also take time, right? The characters are, oh, what's that? There's something in the comet, and should we go? And they're arguing about whether they should go investigate. So you get kind of all that human element to it. The theatrical release, just all of that is eliminated before you know it. And this is while the opening credits are going on, and we're already on the Churchill going to the alien spacecraft. So that, just putting that out there is quite a difference between the two.
It sounds like actually the theatrical cut might be better.
If you think that we don't really need to see much, which we don't, because if you had just started the movie with them finding the Churchill, right, already torched, finding what they refer to as humanoids on the ship, you could begin that way too, and then it could be told in flashback by...
Well, it's already being told in flashback. So the idea that we've got this longer sequence covering events, and then later, Colonel Carlson debriefs the scientific team that was in charge of the mission. So we get a flashback that's fairly lengthy.
Right.
Which makes you feel like maybe we're moving backwards, except his version of the story is tinged with space madness. And then much later in the movie, we get another flashback where Carlson confesses, right, to his bromance, Colonel Kane. There's something really important I didn't tell you in the debriefing. So here's the re-debriefing, going back in time again, which is another one of those very puzzling things about the way that this story is structured.
There's too many colonels in this movie, and you're trying to keep, and there's a lot of characters, and like you pointed out, John, that you're not really sure who is the protagonist or what, because there are so many characters, and then the ones that they do focus on are just move on, and you never see them for the rest of the movie in some cases. So you start to learn, like, okay, this is Steve Railsback movie, Colonel Carlson. Ultimately, he's the driving force here, but he disappears too. And then he comes back, and then we get a flashback and all this talking between the head scientist of the, what they call the European Space Lab, Research Lab or something like that. He's there, he's interested, and what you'd never see is what they're trying to really do with the space vampires, because they're out of their hibernation cases, right, on the table with the blanket over them, or at least the Matilda May, a space girl, has got a blanket over her, and they just have her kind of like in an operating room observing her. That's where we kind of get to the present day.
The idea was they were going to do an autopsy if, in fact, she was dead, and we have Hans Fallada, played by Frank Finlay, who is a scientist obsessed with death, and he's trying to scientifically study death, and we get this whole setup, like this is going to be a big conversation, and I guess it pays off at the end, and that was the conversation where we find out that, Bukowski died off camera, and when I heard that, I'm like, oh, right, that was a guy in this movie, right?
He's at the beginning.
Haven't seen him for 40 minutes, and he seemed really important, for about 10 minutes. And then, no, he wasn't our protagonist.
There's unanswered things as well, because that character, he's the one who encounters, the space girl after she's drained the life out of this hapless guard, right? That no one can resist this woman when they lay eyes on her. However, the beings themselves have that power. Even the shriveled mummy-like thing can beckon people to it. But he encounters her. She goes in for the kiss or something like that, and then whatever happens off screen. They find him. He's in the corner sulking. He's and saying he's weak. And you're thinking, like, why didn't she finish him off? Was she full? Did she have enough?
I think she was full because she had already drained a guard.
Right.
Before they got to Bukowski. But Bukowski's really shaken. Here's a brilliant choice from the director and the actor Matilda May. She seems virginal.
Mm-hmm.
Like just walking around naked, and the premise of the story is they are so overwhelmingly charming, right, that humans are like lemmings before them. All of that is based on the behavior of the people and not on, I don't know, Matilda May sexing it up or trying to seem erotic. Like this goes beyond eroticism.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure Tobe Hooper knows how to make a sleazy movie. I've seen Eaten Alive and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
He knows how to make a really sleazy movie, and clearly he's going in a much different direction here. And maybe it was part of the appeal of trying to make this like giant budget movie, at least by canon standards, a pretty giant budget.
They thought it was going to be a huge science fiction success. Basically, they had a lot of hopes in this movie, even though they did run out of funding about toward the end, and then they got the money and finished the film, but it was almost incomplete.
It was, one of those movies that really did damage to canon movies when they decided to grow bigger ambitions than just making perfectly workable schlock.
Yep. And it was $25 million budget, and Tobe Hooper in interviews about this film, he refers to his relationship with Cannon very glowingly. Like he loved what they did for him. He doesn't really acknowledge that the movie didn't make much money. It did find later success, but at the box office, it didn't do very well. They lost half the...
Well, you mentioned Poltergeist, right?
Yeah,
which he directed in name, but that was Steven Spielberg's movie, and it's an open secret, allegedly, that Spielberg basically directed that movie, but he was not allowed to say that he directed it contractually because he was already making a movie that year.
Right. Now, I'm a defender that I think that's a Tobe Hooper movie. It definitely have Spielberg touches. I mean, it's his story. He wrote the screenplay. He wanted to make the movie, but he couldn't because he was making E.T. at the time. The problem, though, the controversy lies in the cast and crew all have different accounts. So we can't find out. We can't put this to rest because everyone has different versions of what happened during the making of that movie.
But considering... like it was his highest profile movie, but whether or not it was actually his is open to question. So getting to make Lifeforce with a real budget and Golan and Globus, they're, other than running out of money here and there, the notes they gave were, keep going.
Right, yeah.
Like they stayed out of his fucking way and let him
freedom.
Do his job as a director. They hired him because they believed he could deliver the movie they wanted, and they didn't know what movie they wanted, but they wanted to see what he would do.
Right.
Rather than, I don't know, try and torture him by tricking him into making him walk this gauntlet of their indecision. Like, no, they gave him freedom.
Tobe Hooper had mentioned that, with where the origins of this movie come from. He said that the producer, Golan, last name, Menahem Golan, he had basically slapped the novel on his desk and said, this is what you're making. Read it. This is the space vampires, right? So it was their idea to adapt this into the film, and he was the director for hire for that project. However, they gave him complete creative freedom. That's a significant thing that makes this movie stand out, is you don't have that a lot. You don't have many studios willing to take that risk and give somebody Tobe Hooper, someone like Tobe Hooper, $25 million to make this crazy science fiction space opera type film. So it's also indicative at that time. There's a lot of like brazen moves that studios were making, and the result was collapse.
More often than not,
Yeah.
the roads lead to collapse. So, yeah, the Space Vampires, based on a Colin Wilson novel from 1976, or sorry, that was the novel, and Lifeforce based on it. Yeah, I thought the name sounded familiar. I have read one of Colin Wilson's books, not the Space Vampires. Unfortunately, when I was a dissolute youth, I read his biography, Aleister Crowley, The Nature of the Beast, which was published in 1987, 2 years after Life
Yeah, he's a
Force.
pretty prolific author.
He was. And we get special effects by John Dykstra, who worked on, masterpieces like Star Wars A New Hope and Caddyshack.
Mm-hmm. Undeniably. Makeup
We can make
effects.
fun of Caddyshack, but I dare anyone to not treat that gopher like he's a character in the movie.
Oh, sure. He is a character.
Like, he over-delivers for what that puppet should be able to accomplish.
Yeah. The crew on this movie were all at the top of their field, like in special effects, the makeup effects by Nick Maley, who worked in Star Wars as well. I think he's known the most for designing Yoda, John Dykstra as well. So these are A-list crew. The cinematographer did Return of the Jedi, James Bond films, Caveman, right, with Ringo Starr. So this is no lightweight crew, right? So they had the best special effects people, best cinematographer, all these within a canon film as well. And Tobe Hooper, who at the time was an A-list director. So it had a lot.
Was he?
I would say after Poltergeist. Now, that could be disputed because if that was the case, how did he end up at canon?
Yeah.
But he was a big name at the time.
He was a name.
Yeah.
He was a name. Also, I don't know. He's such a strange director.
Stop it. Stop it. Boy, stop it! Stop it!
I mentioned Eaten Alive.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen Eaten Alive?
Yes.
All the way through.
It's evident to me that he walked off that movie, which he did. It feels very incomplete and haphazard, especially toward the end. But then I had read later on that he got in some dispute with the producers or something, and basically walked off the film, and it shows.
So here's my theory about Tobe Hooper. He's not great at story, per se. What he loves is showing crazy people interacting with other crazy people.
I told you, I don't want you coming around here. Now get on out of here. Get off my property. Get off my property.
Well, look at that. Done ruffled his feathers.
And he's a genius at that.
Yes.
Hi, Lynette. You're cute. Anybody ever tell you that?
I said, get. I won't have none of it.
That's his forte.
And we see some of that in Lifeforce.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, the movie, even the special effects, which might look dated,
Mm-hmm.
I think are charming. Just how much commitment there was to trying to make,
Yeah.
you got the zombie puppets early on where
Yeah.
they're, scientifically trying to study, okay, what is going on with these creatures? And the puppets are crude and yet kind of look realistic.
The practical effects are great. I would say that a lot of the space stuff at the beginning is, it's a little shoddy work here and there, but also, you're watching this on Blu-ray, right? And it's going to point out these flaws. So, but to me, the practical effects absolutely still hold up.
Everything but the blue energy kind of swirling around,
Mhm.
I felt was really impactful. And there was nothing wrong with the blue energy swirling around, but, watching a life-size puppet like move around and, it was pretty freaky to watch. So another thought I have is maybe part of the reason why the movie seems so strange in terms of its pacing and structure is, and again, I haven't read the novel, but the plot outline makes a lot more sense as a novel.
Mm-hmm.
Could be wildly nonlinear and okay, and now we're just moving to a different character for a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't be considered crazy. In Cujo, Stephen King has a bit where we are in the mind of Cujo when he gets bit
Right.
by a bat that has rabies. That might explain some of the craziness in, screenwriters who aren't necessarily taking the requisite liberties to try and make the story seem a little bit more streamlined or organic.
Well, you talk about streamline, and I think that's what maybe you would say to the second act, right? The first and second act. kind of flow very seamlessly. It's engrossing, right? Everything at the research laboratory is pretty interesting. And at some point, like we had mentioned, many things are dropped that are never picked back up. Then it becomes this kind of mystery film, right? Like, because then you find out that these space vampires can take the bodies of other people and become them, right? So almost like The Thing or something, when basically they're possessing these bodies and they kill the person in doing that. So now we become like Invasion of the Body Snatchers type movie, and they're trying to track. So I think if you're not paying attention at this point, you will be lost, terribly lost. So many things are happening following the second act, and it's establishing itself as this mystery. They're trying to find, the new body that she's taken. And if you're not paying attention at this point, you will be lost easily because it's going in so many different directions. What you can do to appreciate that is just kind of sit back and be like, admire the craziness of it all, because it's a manic film. There's so much going on. And that is also, in my opinion, a Tobe Hooper trademark, right? It's kind of that chaos that he can't help but portray.
All right, now we're in an episode of Law and Order that's just starting, and you're like, we're almost an hour in.
You have Colonel Colin Kane, played by Peter Firth, and he becomes it becomes a buddy picture at this point. You got Steve Railsback, Colonel Colin Kane.
They have each other's back intuitively, and you're like, how did that happen? When did they bond exactly?
Right.
Because Tom Carlson has bonded with our space woman.
Mm-hmm. They're linked now.
They're linked, which means if he concentrates, he can see what she's seeing. So he's trying to catch up with her, not knowing whose body she's in, but seeing what she can see. So obviously there's only one place they can go, Shawn, and that is the Thurlestone Hospital for the Criminally Insane, run by Dr. Anderson, played by Patrick Stewart, before Star Trek The Next Generation, proving he was quite ready for science fiction schlock, perhaps.
Yeah, he appears to be down for anything in this movie, what they do to his character.
Well, it turns out he is possessed by our vampire queen. And there are moments where she's trying to tempt Tom into kissing her, and they keep cutting out footage with Matilda May and Patrick Stewart, because it's physically, right, it's Patrick Stewart's body, but it's the mind of Matilda May, and Tom is getting confused. But meanwhile, we do get shots of Patrick Stewart trying to get Tom Carlson to kiss him.
Beat the shit out of Patrick Stewart too? You're like, dude, what? Calm down. If I recall, he's really, really hard on him and starts slapping him around and stuff. Like, get out of the body. It's like, well, I don't know really what you're trying to do. Is this a brawl now? But it gets pretty intense.
Well, that was our version of The Exorcist.
Yeah, there you go.
Patrick Stewart not being a little girl.
Yeah. Now, I will say with Matilda May, something that I meant to bring up. Now, she was a former ballet dancer prior to acting. That speaks to her.
Ballet or belly?
Ballet.
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 Okay.
That speaks to kind of her graceful movements. Like, yes, she is naked for most of the movie. That's a part of her character, right? And that's
well, half her appearance in the movie.
Yeah. But she is acting, right? The movements she does, the acting, I've always admired, and I am not lying here. I admire the acting she does with her eyes. It is pretty intense. So yes, I'm not just looking at her eyes, but it is something. She does a very good job in this role, and she's not just a nude space vampire. There's something, her talent shows through.
And it's kind of insane committing a mainstream movie. Like, okay, yeah, this character's a be walking around naked.
Yeah, it plays for comic
for
effect.
A lot.
Yeah, in some moments where people are like, I think that when she escapes the research lab, the security guards are very,
Yeah, what do we do? How do we police a naked woman?
Right. And they see her as no threat. They're more just stunned, right? As anybody would be. They're easy targets.
And she's overwhelmingly charming to them. So there's that as well.
And she didn't speak English. And I believe she's Italian. So she did this role not knowing English at the time. In later interviews I've seen with her, she speaks fluently. But at the time, she's very young. Didn't speak any English. She's doing all this, in the nude, can't speak English, and still doing a lot of great work, I think.
Among all the weirdos who fell in love with this movie, how much of that is just catching this movie at the right age?
Oh, absolutely.
where you're like, oh, she's naked and she's staying naked. You're like, I could watch some more of this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there are a couple shots that are recreated from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The tracking behind the woman shot, he does that in this as well, but this time she's, a completely nude woman.
I thought you were recycling footage. No, the strategy of
Strategy, yes.
dollying up behind a female character.
Yep.
And why does he do that?
I don't know, psychologically or...
Psychologically.
It's an inventive shot. I would say that, technically it's an inventive shot, probably not the easiest thing to pull off.
Well, in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I believe she was on a swing, and then they had to get the camera to go under the swing.
Yeah.
And
really
then
impressive.
Up and then follow her as she walked to the house. And so the approach to the house is where shit really goes sideways.
Yeah.
So that was a way to just build a moment.
It's serene and peaceful.
And it's not exactly the most, thoughtful way to build up our relationship with this character, but like physically it works as a pretty good shorthand. What was happening in Lifeforce for that similar shot?
Well, she was leaving the building, right? So she
exploded the windows.
Yeah. And we're I know there's a tracking shot sort of up the stairs where her figure is fully, and from behind is fully in frame. So we're following her out of this building as she just effortlessly escapes, right? Because there is what do they say? She's destroyed worlds, apparently. So she can do pretty much anything she wants. And the men fall for it.
The men overwhelmingly fall for it. Again, I haven't read the novel. I just wonder if this maybe played better in the novel. Now,
I will say part of for some reason, I always go back and if I'm interested in the differences, I'll go back and read a novel after seeing the movie. So I did do that with Lifeforce as well. And there's a lot of
You've read the
differences.
novel?
Yeah.
And you've waited this long to bring it up.
I was contemplating bringing it up because I don't know how much I remember of it. I know that it's very character heavy too, as well. But of course, there's a lot of talking, right? There's like half the book is them just talking about these vampires and what are we going to do? And it's two vampire females are found with one male, and they're blonde, if I believe. So that's one change. They made it 2 males, 1 female, where in the book it's 2 females, 1 male. There are moments that happen in the movie that are in the book, but the book is much different to the point where I can see why the author apparently didn't care for this movie too much. So I don't know how if you look at the screenplay, right, for Lifeforce, what they chose to do with it was deviated heavily from the novel.
Tom Carlson is he's trying to convey to his buddy, Colonel Kane, we just bonded and I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And he's like confessing how vulnerable he was and how overwhelmed. My word for it is space madness.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think that's the exact analogy we're meant to draw, and Ren and Stimpy would come later than Lifeforce.
Sure. Classic episode.
Trying to get so deep into these psychological, like mixed up states seems like it might be easier in novel form.
Yeah, and also the Colonel Carlson, played by Steve Railsback. Railsback, thank you. Much different character in the book. I think a lot more understandable in the sense that, and most of the character in the movie is just manic and out of his mind, traumatized, right, under the spell of this space woman. So there's a lot of craziness going on where I'm not really relating so much to the character because he's always screaming in my face. But the book, he's much more grounded. He's got a family. He's more of a detective character, right? He's not really under her spell. I would have preferred that type of character than what we got. I think he did, a good job as he could with the material, right? But honestly, I don't care too much for his character in this movie.
Well, I think there's a giant question of his agency. Like, how much of himself is he in control of? Even at the end, right? With a giant assist from Colonel Kane, he does do the big important thing that prevents the space vampires from fully invading Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But if it wasn't for Colonel Kane, everything would have just been lost.
Yeah. What would they have done if he didn't show up? They seem to be in the act of, about to be in this erotic act. Maybe
They were doing some sort of Ghostbusters
Yeah.
transference.
Okay,
where
gotcha. It was never really too clear to me.
Ghostbusters was 84?
Yes, 84.
And I'm sure Ghostbusters didn't invent this, but having sex to create some
Keymaster.
giant spell. Yeah.
Now we should also mention, because somebody may feel lost and the plot so far. So just to recap, right? This is the kind of trajectory of the film. They find the aliens on a derelict spacecraft, take them back to Earth. The aliens get free, wreak havoc. Then they track the female to this psychiatric hospital where she's taken the form of Patrick Stewart. They sedate Patrick Stewart, get him on a helicopter, going to take him somewhere, and then at that point, she forms from the blood that spills from Patrick Stewart. And then she vanishes, like I guess vampires can do.
We've lost her. She's gone.
She disappears. They go to a military outpost. They say that London has been quarantined. Sorry.
They find out that there's an invasion happening.
Invasion.
In the
yes.
helicopter.
Right. So the two colonels, we'll call them, they want to get out there. They want to save London, and they're being told, no, you can't, the quarantine can't go. And I think they'd steal a car. I can't remember. They escape the military outpost, go into the, ground zero, which is a church, right?
Yeah.
The bodies lying on it. Very great shot of all these bodies lying on the steps, zombified bodies. He's been beckoned to the church to meet with the space girl, the Carlson character. Meanwhile, Colonel Kane has got the sword from the scientist Hans, right?
Yeah, Hans Vallada.
Who's deteriorated into an evil zombie himself. Takes a sword, goes through the streets as he's driving, and there's zombies trying to get into the car. So now we're in George A. Romero territory. Now there's your zombie film. Those are the scenes I saw as a kid that I was like, what is this crazy ass movie? Goes to the church.
Every 20 minutes, it becomes a different movie.
Yeah. Colonel Kane, right? He
Yep.
takes a sword, magic, long, medieval looking dagger type sword. And then one of the male vampires, who you don't see through most of the film, he just appears in front of the church, takes this form of the bats that we see at the beginning. Probably the best practical effects in the movie, in my opinion, really stands out. This full-scale vampire bat.
That was a nice payoff. At the beginning, we see the remains
corpses
of one of those bats.
Yeah.
That they try and take back with them. Doesn't quite work. And then we see one alive and well at the very end. Oh, the beginning of the movie is tying up with the end of the movie in a way that makes
something makes sense.
Clear sense. You're like, oh.
Colonel Kane takes a giant sword, stabs the bat, now the male vampire, killing him, I presume, then rushes into the church, passes all the bodies on the steps, goes in there, finds Carlson with the space girl consummating or something. And
they are having sex at the bottom of a vortex through some kind of portal.
Right.
Naturally.
So the Colonel Kane throws the sword to Carlson, and then Carlson impales himself and the space girl. And then they shoot out into the sky, into the giant umbrella spaceship. It's got this big umbrella claw to it. So that's what's sucking up all the life force.
Like a satellite dish.
Right. They go into this satellite dish, and as they fly up, I think the credits follow them. The credit is like, all right, let's wrap this movie up, and the end.
We see Colonel Kane looking up at the sky.
Yes. Okay, so there's our final shot.
Which feels abrupt.
I believe because they ran out of money.
This not being a tragedy, what we needed was a celebration.
Something like that.
So ideally, we would have had 100 Ewoks come out and sing nub nub. Or you could go with a Breakfast Club and just go, yeah. And instead, he just looks up at the sky, roll credits, and it's like, what just happened?
I think that
How does he feel about what happened? The answer is, we don't know Tobe Hooper didn't know. Peter Firth didn't know. Nobody knew how the character felt. And so if we had another 7 seconds of footage with him doing anything to indicate what this victory meant,
Some kind of closure.
I think the movie would become a lot stronger just from having the right 7 seconds at the end.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. Because it is abrupt, and I can only imagine 1985, American audiences sitting there saying, what the hell did I just watch, right? Or what just happened? The movie was not very well reviewed either, so the critics were attacking it. There were some glowing reviews here and there, but it was very uneven, right? Much like the film itself, the reviews were just as uneven. It kind of came and went, and then became a mainstay on VHS and television much later.
And glorious epic legend for teenage boys of the 1980s, everlastingly.
Yeah, definitely made an impact to most teenage boys, I would say.
And I would say, so I didn't quite feel that way about Lifeforce. I do feel that way, or did feel that way about another Dan O'Bannon project, Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, Return of the Living Dead, yes.
Linnea Quigley as Trash.
Yes.
Who isn't naked for half the movie, but is naked for a lot more than would be normal for.
And it's really out of
such a movie.
nowhere. She just, they earned that R rating. She just starts stripping and dancing.
Well,
in a
it's
cemetery.
gratuitous.
Yeah.
On the other hand, in such horror movies, that kind of nudity is often gratuitous. Plus, for that character, gratuitous sex seems very much appropriate for that character. So I certainly can't begrudge anyone who adores Lifeforce, despite my abusing you earlier about why you like this so much. I do think if you, catch us randomly somewhere, like in the middle, there is the question, okay, where are we in the movie and what can I remember?
Yeah.
Because parts of the movie are unforgettable, but it does seem like it's all jumbled.
Yeah, I had to watch it last weekend prior to this just to make sure I had things right, because there's some, again, like you said, there's some parts I remember vividly. There's a lot of gaps there, and I can see why, seeing it again, I'm like, okay, that's why, because it moves so fast. It changes what kind of movie it is by the end, which again, you can credit that to this kind of chaotic, bonkers approach of Tobe Hooper. I don't know if anyone else would have been able to pull that off. You can't bullshit that, right? You can't pretend that kind of craziness that is in this film.
Let me throw out a really weird name to try and connect to this movie. Quentin Tarantino. Pulp Fiction is an anthology movie, which, because it's so well done, we keep forgetting it's an anthology movie.
Right.
It's a generic category of genre, like true romance is a genre of novels. Pulp Fiction is a genre. So I do think it could have been interesting. Not that this project would ever happen, but if someone like Tarantino really thought about, how do I take a crazy novel and somehow build a movie that feels both like a movie and a novel, maybe the writing could have been a little stronger. And I haven't followed Dan O'Bannon and Don Jacoby that much. Dan O'Bannon, I can always credit for, all right, there's going to be some crazy stuff in whatever he writes.
Yeah.
And he is a horror legend, right? He wrote, I think, the first draft of Alien, even though it was the chest burster that was, I think, the really only main ingredient that stuck.
Right. A lot changed with the script, but then legally he is credited as the sole writer of Alien. But there's a lot of dispute to who actually wrote that movie. But hey, he, I give him the credit. He's a great writer.
But he worked on John Carpenter's first movie, Dark Star.
Yep, acting.
Return of the Living Dead.
Which would have made if he had stuck around, they could have made, I think, a really solid trilogy. I've always felt the same way about Conan. Like if Milius had just done 2 more, we could have had a great solid trilogy, but we didn't get that. We were only given one great Return of the Living Dead, one great Conan the Barbarian.
Sometimes that's enough.
Some things aren't meant to be. Oh, and you mentioned Tarantino, so it wouldn't surprise anyone to find out that he's a fan of this film and has commented on the kind of craziness that we've discussed, that he was fascinated by it as well. Now he's got a lot of opinions about everything. But I do agree with him on Lifeforce, so it's definitely something he admires.
Well, and as someone who's seen more movies than, well, most of the population, even cinephiles.
Yeah.
I think Tarantino gives a lot of credit for people who show him things that he hasn't seen before.
Yeah. Yeah. Where I split the most with Tarantino, because I had read his book, and I agree with him until he gets to the 1980s. He seems to have nothing but contempt for that decade of films. I'm like, there's a lot of great films in 1980, and he just dismisses the whole decade as like trash. And I'm like, wow. So I don't agree with him.
I'm not sure he agrees with him.
Yeah.
There are moments in the 80s that he certainly liked, but, you know, he's older than you.
Yeah.
Growing up in the 70s, like that was the Wild West.
Oh, yeah. The new Hollywood. Yeah.
Of the new Hollywood, and the 80s killed that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he may
that
resent that. Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably where a large part of his attitude came from. Lifeforce, I don't think is a movie he ever would make.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why is because Golan and Globus aren't making movies anymore.
God love them.
And, you know, it is kind of special how many interesting and professionals just came together to make this bizarre movie.
Yeah.
You've got this American director of grotesque horror who wants to make this science fiction thriller inspired by British horror of like a generation before him. And
largely British cast.
Henry Mancini's score. There are so many old school things about this. I know that like Jurassic Park is 93, which is where, you know, CGI begins its takeover in terms of effects. And I realized practical effects didn't die in 93, even if, I don't know, they took a hit in the industry.
Just depending on how they're done.
But I do think this is a really interesting moment in time.
Mm-hmm. If you'll pardon me, just to shift back to Tarantino real quick, because we did bring up his book.
Oh,
he has a whole chapter about Funhouse, directed by Tobe Hooper, which was before Poltergeist. I think Lifeforce should have its own. I would think you'd want to talk about this movie. Why did he pick Funhouse to write a whole chapter about? And he also is very critical of the film. So I'm like, so you're obviously not a fan, but why is this movie the one Tobe Hooper movie you're dedicating an entire chapter to? I just thought it was a little strange.
Well, if he wrote about every movie he thought about,
it would be volumes.
It would be bigger than an encyclopedia. So apparently, this conversation is a sequel to a letter I wrote you.
Oh, yes. So I want to bring this relic here, this nice artifact. This is a letter that...
if it so pleaseth the court.
Exhibit A. This is a letter John wrote me because I'm in the Army Reserves, nearly retired. Okay, so that's a fact. I was deployed to Kuwait for about a year with the expeditionary unit. So we did a lot of stuff out there, and it was toward the tail end of the deployment that I got a letter, a nice, pleasant surprise, a letter from John with your Toni Morrison stamps here. And I was like, okay, what's going on?
Postmark date there?
Oh, the date is August 5th, 2023. Okay, so, and I'm wondering, okay, what's going on with John, or what are we going to talk about here? And you start with, checking in, seeing how I'm doing. Then you just go right into Lifeforce. And you said, I noticed your Lifeforce poster, which I recently watched due to your implicit recommendation. I never seen this Hooper film before. I'm not sure the movie is great, but on the other hand, I've been thinking a lot about it, which is unusual for horror films, if Lifeforce is even in that genre. I suppose the story overlaps horror, science fiction, and adventure with a lot of melodrama coating the entire thing like funky caramel. What follows are some of my thoughts on Lifeforce to see if they accord at all with your own. So then I get this pretty thorough analysis for 2 or 3 pages on Lifeforce, and I was like, what a tremendous letter to get overseas to have me thinking about one of my favorite bizarro films. And then, you're going, I don't know if you want me to read the whole thing, but I'll kind of point out, you did bring up Leanna Quigley, Return of the Living Dead, the special effects, the climax of the film with Carlson copulating with the vampire queen in a dusty vortex of doomed souls is a sex scene whose climax doesn't occur. A magic sword naturally pierces the collective psyche of the space vampires. And then you asked me at the end, what are your reasons for loving the movie, Shawn? Do tell your friend, John. So if you recall any of this letter, it was a couple of years ago.
Nope.
And I still have this letter.
I'm not even sure I wrote it.
Did you have a ghostwriter?
Yeah, but his name is also John King.
So I didn't get too many letters at the time asking my opinions of Lifeforce, so it was a nice welcome change.
All right, 3 paragraphs on the music. Seems like I did have thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
What holds the movie together, I think, is the appearance of the vampire queen who roams in the buff for a long time and is beautiful but not necessarily in a voluptuous way despite wielding a significant figure. She seems both self-assured and vulnerable or improbably innocent, and her smile is infectious. She seems, for lack of a better word, human, meaning that the intense attraction men feel for her is a feeling the audience can partly project upon her, whereas even women who seem like goddesses will have a much more variable effect on the audience. I think of the adventures of Baron Munchausen, in which Uma Thurman plays Aphrodite,
Hello.
who is believable but not especially interesting as the great goddess of love. Matilda May, on the other hand, is memorable. Men's lust is some imposition from a monolithic psychic force that has hidden for millennia inside a comet. I do wonder how straight women feel watching Lifeforce. Do they identify the cosmic dangers of lust? And identify with the dangerous sense of wielding that power that will make men hostile, or do they roll their eyes at the whole scenario? By the end of the movie, I'm not sure I feel compelled by the love plot, as it were, but for the whole second act, I found that theme interesting. All right.
Yes, yes.
So it seems like I didn't have radically different thoughts than I have now.
And I still owe you a response to this letter outside of our conversation here. So,
All right, well, get right on that.
yes, I will.